Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. We are delighted to have you here to join us for our Women in Energy Leadership panel. This is part of the Olivia Gibbs Energy Education Series, and we typically run webinars about twice a month on a variety of topics, but today is particularly fun because we get to have a group of folks here live with us in person in addition to the online program, which is just awesome. And I want to give special thanks to Julie and to Chesapeake Energy for hosting this program here in their beautiful campus for us in Oklahoma City today. Super fun to get to have some live interaction. So we're going to chat here for a bit at the beginning, and then we will have time at the end for some Q&A. So for the folks that are with us here live, we'll have a couple of microphones available. Just put your hand up and kindly wait till someone gets to you so the folks that are listening online can hear your question. And then if you're watching via Teams, at any point during the program, you can go ahead and just type something into the chat, and we'll get to those at the end. For those of you that aren't familiar, Olivia Gibbs is an energy, oil and gas law firm. And my name is Jackie Martin. I head up the business development and marketing for the firm, and I'm located in our Houston office. We also have offices in Columbus and Lafayette and here in Oklahoma City. And I'm thrilled to be joined here today by my colleague and my friend Chuck Lundeen, who probably doesn't need introduction in this room. But Chuck is not only an experienced oil and gas lawyer, but he's also an experienced landman and has had a wonderful career, including executive positions in-house at both public and private companies. And he knows our panelists well. So I'm super excited to be doing this with you today, Chuck. And with that, I'm going to turn it over and let you introduce our awesome speakers.
Great. Thanks for all of you for attending and also those online. And I'm really thrilled because I know these ladies for years and we've been friends. And so when I asked them to come, they didn't hesitate. And we had a long list of people we wanted to come, and this is our top choices. So we really scored well there. I'm going to go ahead and read their bios to you, even though they'll be on the screen for some of those online. Serena Buck is Senior Vice President of Land for Ascent Resources here in Oklahoma City. She has over 35 years of experience in upstream E&P, including previous senior positions at American Energy Partners, Chesapeake, TXO, Marathon, and EOG Resources. She is a member of the AAPL, Energy Explorers, Women in Minerals, ADAM, OKC, that's Acquisitions, Divestitures, and Mergers Group, and several other industry organizations. Serena also served as a mentor for the Energy Management Program at the University of Oklahoma for more than 10 years and was awarded the Bill Majors Distinguished Service Award by the OCAPL in 2022. She was also recently honored by Hart Energy as one of the 25 influential women in energy for 2023. In her spare time, she enjoys time with her family, husband Rick, their 4 adult children, and their spouses, and the most amazing 3 grandchildren who refer to her as Gigi. So welcome, Gigi. Heather Powell is a co-founder, president, and CEO and leader of acquisition efforts at Ventana Exploration and Production. Under Heather's leadership, Ventana launched its organic acquisition strategy in 2016, building a portfolio of over 65,000 net acres and more than 5,000 wells. In 2020, Heather was named one of the top 25 most influential women in energy by Oil and Gas Investor and Hart Energy, and she currently serves on the board of the Petroleum Alliance of Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Energy Resources Board, as well as the board of the YMCA of Greater Oklahoma City. And Julie Woodard, again, thank you for letting us use your facilities at Chesapeake. Julie has served as the land manager for the Marcellus land team since 2016 and has worked for Chesapeake since 2004 in various roles within the land department. She's an active member of the OCAPL and AAPL and serves as chairman of the AAPL Awards Committee. And she was also named to Oil and Gas Investors' distinguished list of 20 under 40 in the industry. She was named OCAPL's Landman of the Year in 2014 and recognized as AAPL's Landman of the Year in 2014. Julie holds a BS in Economics Pre-Law from Oklahoma State University and subsequently attended the University of Oklahoma's Energy Management Program. She now serves on the Energy Management Board of Directors and has also been an active member in the university's William M. Majors Mentoring Program for years. She is president of the Edmond Public Schools Foundation and a dedicated mother of 3. So again, we're so happy to have you here, and we're proud to have you here. So thank you for sharing with us today. Let's just go ahead and start by hearing from each of you about your current roles and what it is about the energy sector that really interests you. So we'll start with you, Serena.
Age before beauty, I see. So Serena Buck, I'm currently Senior Vice President, Ascent Resources for the land group. That kind of encompasses all facets of the land management team. I have about a staff of 70. As you guys all know, it takes a village to do what we do, and I'm very, very proud of each and every one of them. That is from land operations to land admin to corporate records to A&D and title diligence. For those of you that don't know Ascent Resources, we are an independent Ohio Utica pure play operator. We're currently the most active operator and the #1 producer of natural gas out of Ohio. The great thing about it is it's actually founded by Aubrey McClendon. After he left here at Chesapeake in 2013, he created American Energy Partners, and American Energy Utica was one of those platforms that spun off in 2015 to Ascent Resources. And next month, we celebrate our 10-year anniversary, and I have some of my team members that have been here with me that whole time here in the audience. So thank you guys very much for staying with us.
I'm Heather Powell, and my current role at Ventana as CEO also encompasses human resources, IT, investor relations, and a number of other things. We started the company back in into 2016 with private equity money. Our investors are Starwood Capital, Equity Group Investments out of Chicago, and the Virginia Tech Foundation. We have a team of 10 people, and we're non-op focused. As Chuck said, we've accumulated about 6,000 wells and I think we're close to 70,000 acres now across the state of Oklahoma. It's been very exciting, a whole different world going from public companies to private, and the amount of work that is encompassed with being at a private company. So that's what we're doing today.
Yep. So Julie Woodard, and like Chuck said in my bio, I've spent all of my career at Chesapeake. So started in 2004, worked a variety of assets for the company, and in 2016 was moved over to the Marcellus and the Utica to manage those assets. So I've loved every bit of it. We've been through many transformations as a company. Many of you have either watched or have been here, have been a part of it. All 3 of us have worked here at the same time, so kind of fun fact about that. But I've loved every bit of it. I think why I think the energy sector is so interesting to work in, for me personally, I just tend to be kind of a problem solver by nature, and this industry has provided a solution to a problem that the world has had for years, and at this point in time, it's more critical, and we have a sustainable solution to that problem. So that excites me every day to get up and be a part of that. So.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to mix it up a little bit. We'll start with Heather this time. I've been fortunate through my career to wear many hats and different roles, and I found out that there's many ways to the paths of success, and I know you guys have too. They say that in life, the steps you've taken in life have brought you where you stand today. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are today, and Heather, we'll just let you start and give us an idea.
Sure. I was thinking about a funny story. I spoke to some students on the OERB Student Leadership Committee a few weeks ago, and I haven't shared the story in a long time, but I don't come from a family in oil and gas, and so I was at Thanksgiving. I was a 4.5-year college student, and so it was Thanksgiving, and my dad sat me down and said, what are you going to do with the rest of your life, and where are you going to go work? And I was working at a bank in Edmond at the time, and I said, well, I have a great job at the bank. I'm going to keep doing that. And he said, well, I'm not going to be paying your bills anymore, so do you make enough to sustain your life at the bank? And banking is a male-dominated field. Do you enjoy it enough that you want to go through this climb through banking? I tell that part because it's ironic. And so I was like, yeah, I don't really have any real passion for the banking industry. And you're right, there's a bunch of dudes at the bank in senior level positions. So I'm going to look at something else. So he tells me I have to apply for at least 3 jobs. So before going to get ready for the day, I applied for a few jobs. The first one was to Dominion, the second was Chesapeake, and I don't recall what the third one was. Within 30 minutes, my phone rang, and I answer it. It's a lady from Dominion HR group called, and she said, "Hi, Heather, I got your application. I'd love to visit with you." I said, "Oh, great, I'm really excited." She said, "You applied for a senior gas marketing position. Can you tell me why you were qualified for this position?" So I said, "Absolutely. I mean, I have the full confidence of the world." I said, "I had a lot of marketing classes in my business and finance degree, and I got A's in all of them. I could market anything." And she's just laughing. She said, "Okay, I like you, Heather. We go through a discussion." She said, "I really like you. You're absolutely not qualified to be a senior gas marketer at Dominion, but I'm going to keep your resume, and if we find something that you might be qualified for, I'm going to give you a call back." Great. So I head off to go take a shower. My phone rings again. Another lady calls from Chesapeake, and so we had a great phone interview. I picked a more appropriate position apparently at Chesapeake that I may be qualified for. And so as soon as I got back to Oklahoma City, I came in for an interview with HR, and then followed up with an interview with Larry Kosho. Chesapeake was emerging into the Southern Division and was starting the Arklatex group, and Larry was unable to take anybody from the Northern Division because they were busy enough in that group, and he had to fully staff up. So that got me started in oil and gas. I spent almost 4 years at Chesapeake and loved every minute of it. Fell in love with everything I was doing, and my intent was to go to law school. So that was my initial plan, save up some money while working at Chesapeake. But the more I got into things, Larry was like, "You seem to love this. You might go to OU and talk to Ted Jacobs and see if you can get the energy management degree." At that time, that was a requirement for Chesapeake for you to move up in the land group. And so I did, loved Ted, took the 8-ish classes I needed, and Chesapeake moved me up into the land group, and I never really looked back. I find oil and gas fascinating. I made the leap over to Sandridge whenever Tom Ward left Chesapeake to go over there, and it was fascinating to be a part of a company that went from private to public and all of the steps that entails. I know you guys have looked into some of that stuff too. It's fascinating being a part of that side of the industry, and then leaving Sandridge to go to RKI, to a private company. So all these steps really led me to where I'm at. I loved RKI. I loved seeing what I was doing was making a real difference each day, and didn't really want to go back from that. And I never really wanted to own an oil and gas company or raise private money. That was not in my trajectory at my dad's kitchen counter at 22, applying for random jobs. But it was exactly where I needed to be, and I love what I do. And you're exactly right. Each little step you take leads you to where you end up. So, long answer, but.
It was good time. All good timing.
Yeah, so we kind of have some things in common. You mentioned I graduated from college, Oklahoma State, with a degree in economics, and my plan, it was pre-law was the emphasis, and I was going to go to law school. It was the whole plan. And I do have some family that's in the industry, and my mom was kind of pushing me to have some conversations with some folks that were tied to the energy management program. And next thing I know, I am having a meeting with Ted Jacobs. And this is, I was accepted to law school, about to basically go, and had this meeting, and he said, "You don't want to do that." And he said, "What do you like about, why do you think you want to be a lawyer? What do you think you like about that?" And as we just discussed more about the program, and there was a lot of overlap with a lot of my interests that the energy management program could provide. And in my mind, I thought, okay, well, I can't just rely on my economics degree. I'm definitely not going to do that, because that's going to land me a job making maybe, I don't know, $25,000 a year, doing something, and then who knows what who knows what my career would look like. So it was either law school or energy management. Decided to pursue energy management. Had some mentors that had been through the program that I talked to, and it just felt like it was a good fit for what my interests were. So I started that program. I already had a degree, so it was interesting as it was a little bit of a different, I was kind of the non-traditional student at OU at that time. I commuted back and forth, and I worked, ended up working full-time for Chesapeake as an intern. So I immediately, because I had a degree, it's funny when you made the comment about your phone kind of ringing pretty quickly. Well, at that point in time, if you look back about to that 2004 timeframe, that's where we see that there was going to be this gap in experience and people coming into the industry. And so same thing, Ted started telling people, hey, I've got this student who has a degree already. I thought I was just going to get an internship, and I was getting full-time offers just like left and right. So it was a really interesting time. I accepted the job with Chesapeake full-time and worked throughout the school year. And so that's kind of how I arrived at Chesapeake. But again, just had a variety of different experiences. This company's been through so many different things. I feel like I've worked for at least 4 different companies, probably more during that time. But going from, I think at the peak when you all were here, our land department was upwards of 1,200 people, and now we're about 60, 65. So, we've decreased by about 94% over that time. So, you just, everything changes, right? The way you work, everything about the way we do our business. Our portfolio has obviously changed dramatically over that time as well. And so I've been through bankruptcy and emerged from bankruptcy and lots of different experiences that I think have led to me being where I am. Super appreciative and thankful for the opportunities that I've had here.
Great, thank you. Serena?
Yeah, so I have a little bit longer story, probably. Probably have 20 years on you guys.
Had more time to do it.
But it's always interesting, the similarities that we have. I remember Julie's journey, and what I love about Julie's current position is she's in the management role that I left when I left Chesapeake. It's amazing to see the journeys that we've had, but mine was very unconventional. I didn't come from any oil and gas. I'm first generation oil and gas, and actually first generation college degree. I didn't have a career path set out. I literally started working for an oil company just down the street. It was called Texas International. It doesn't even exist anymore, but the summer between my junior and sophomore year of college, I was working in a land department, and I was kind of just doing everything. I was reading leases, and you gotta remember, this is before computers, before fax machines, before emails, so I'm hand typing special clauses in leases, and I'm hand typing shut-in payments with 4 carbon copied colors so that all my whiteout was in very different liquid paper, and pink and green and yellow, and because I typoed a lot. But that was kind of interesting to me that you're reading these leases. I was fascinated by kind of the history and how you put the puzzle piece together when you're chaining out the title, and I liked the interaction with the landowners, but I had no idea what a landman was. I had no idea, other than I typed some well proposals and I typed some checks. And gotta remember, all this was manual typewriter. It sounds like I was on a buggy and wagon, but it really wasn't that bad. But reality, going out to take one of my first leases, and I had a company car, and it had a mounted cell phone. It was as big as my shoe, It's nothing like we have today. But that was a great experience, introduction to it. Similar in that that company was shutting down. You got to remember, this is the 80s, so you got the boom, you got the bust. And I got a phone call from a company downtown called TXO Production, which Lloyd up there remembers. And before I left that company, they were calling me to come and work down there, and I met so many amazing people during that time, TXO, and the connections that I met there, like Bob Kelly and Mike Schween and Bob Portman led me to EOG, and then EOG, Bob Portman, led me to Chesapeake, and then Chesapeake really here is where I very much kind of honed in on the trade, learned a lot about the leadership, and have so much to be thankful for, not just for the mentorship that I have here, but for Aubrey in general, because he then took me to Ascent, and kind of that's where I am today.
That's great. I remember those days myself, so brings back nightmares of having to type everything. But you did learn it. You did learn it.
Typewriter at Chesapeake when I started on every floor. So so I don't know what that says about.
Well, a lot of times you had to type.
It was electric.
You had to manually type checks a lot of times, so you had stuff like that. And this is a question, just any of you can answer this one. It's how have you or do you encourage the next generation of talent to find the path that will work best for them? So you found your path, and a lot of times it's just chance. It's where you are at the time. But how do you encourage?
I can take a stab at it.
Okay.
I think a couple things that advice that I would give is find a mentor, find someone that can help you, like just anything that you're interested in, and learn about it and ask questions and see if it's something that, sparks some kind of interest in you. And also that requires you to kind of understand a little bit more about yourself, which I think over time I have gotten there, right? But that's kind of hard to do at the beginning because you don't really know. But there's certain things that I think each of us need in our work environment, in our just things that, like, what motivates you. And so I think it's really important to figure that out. And if you can find good mentors that can help you do that, I think you'll end up doing something that you really love.
That's a great point, Julie. I think one of the things that we don't take enough time for, just as people, especially with busy careers, is to really do some of that introspection. And in part because it's challenging, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not always super comfortable to just sort of take a big block of time and sit and go, what do I really want to do here? And what am I about? And what are my strengths? And all those different things. But I think that's exactly right. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I think, here formally we had a program that helped us kind of along in that. So it's kind of just learning about yourself. And one of the things that I had never even thought about is what do I need out of something?
Right.
And for me, it's, I need to feel like I'm adding value, and I need to feel respected. And if I have those two things, then I'm motivated. And I feel like I could probably do just about anything. So I think, but I would have never, day one starting here, if you would have asked me, like, what do you need in your work environment? I would have been like, I don't know. Computer. I wouldn't have even thought that way. So
I think everyone's path is different, right? And finding what works for you. We all have different strengths. We all have different weaknesses. And we all had different paths to where we are. But you kind of have those common threads where, as women and as leaders, we all end up. But finding for the people that work with you, what is their strength and what is their weaknesses, and helping them hone in and educate on what they can do better or what they need to work on. Not everyone's going to be able to enjoy reading contracts or negotiating deals. Some are better data consumers, and some are better socially, and they like to talk to the landowners, or they're better at business development. So finding kind of your strength and kind of to what you said, finding an advocate that will not only mentor you, but be an advocate for you when you're not in the room. This is so very important. I did have that early on, and I have so much to be thankful for that. I found those parties. At that time, it was all men, so I will say they were male mentors. But today, it's a different climate, and we have male and female, and I think that it's so important for us to find out what it is your passion, what is it that you want, what are your goals, but you have to make those known. If you don't speak those into the universe, they may not exist. I think early on I thought, I'm going to work really hard and my work ethic's going to shine and I'm going to be invited to a seat at the table and get all these promotions because people are just going to know how brilliant I am. No, you have to make it known what your goals are, what your aspirations are, and then you have to exemplify it. So finding someone that can help mentor and advocate you, but speak it into the universe, because someone's not going to just automatically know what your goals and aspirations are.
That's true. Great advice.
Perfect segue too. I wanted to ask about that. I wanted to ask about how you're talking about getting someone to advocate for you, and you've just given some great tips. But I think throughout the course of my career, certainly, but as women generally, it can be more challenging to advocate for yourself.
100%.
And I think a lot of people, regardless of gender, fall into that trap of just I'll do a great job and magically the universe will know it. Just kind of climb the ladder or whatever it is. And Serena, I thought, you mentioned earlier that your team has been with you for quite a while too, which is, I think that says a lot. And So I'm curious to hear, if you have other tips for advocating for yourself, and also how we can do that in a way that keeps, a good environment and sort of not super sharp elbows, which I think is a trap some folks are, worried about falling into as well, and just things that might have worked as you've gone through your career path, or maybe that you've seen other people do really well. And maybe Julie, I'll ask you that if you have thoughts.
Yeah, I do. So yeah, I'm a huge proponent of sponsorship, advocates, mentors, but I think somebody mentioned it when we were at Sarah Week a few weeks ago in one of the panel discussions on DEI and women in leadership, but they said, mentors speak at you and advocates speak about you. And I think that is very important, and it's tough to kind of think about, like, well, how do I have a sponsor? How do you get a sponsor? And I thought back to, the sponsors and or mentors that I've had in my career, and I feel like I'm very fortunate in that when I started here at Chesapeake, yeah, it's a male-dominated industry, and it really hasn't changed a whole lot. The last stat that I heard, it's 22% of females are in energy, or 22% of the energy workforce is female. And so, it's not like it's changed dramatically even from when I started, almost 20 years ago, but my first boss was a female, Pat Good, and then like 2 bosses later was Serena. So, that was early in my career, and I had these females who were strong leaders and had a seat at the table. At that time, think about, this company was upwards of 12,000 people. Those ladies were in the room, like, in a big way, and everybody knew it. And I think that was my example. Like, that's what I had to start with. I didn't have a lot of, some of the experiences that a lot of females have when they start. And so, I think I had advocates and sponsors just by, like you said, it's work ethic, it's doing a good job, it's showing your value, but I think it's also confidence and a lot of listening. So I think it's tough to earn that seat at the table, to have your voice heard if you're always talking, and that would be something I would tell myself 20 years ago, is do more listening than you do talking, and earn that respect. And again, I feel very fortunate because I think that I've always had that, and it's just, I think been a result of having a lot of really good sponsors and mentors myself, and seeking those out, and being very intentional about building those relationships.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just happen, because like you said,
Right.
You have all these great ideas, and everybody has lots of things that they're doing, and they're very busy, and they're not thinking, like, I wonder what every single person's thinking and what their goals are. Like, we know that at a high level with our teams, but there's somebody that's got some really good ideas that isn't being heard, likely. And so I think as leaders, it's really important too for us to ask questions, especially, going back to like different personalities. Our teams are made up of very different people. So you have some that are more introverted, some that are more extroverted. You've got to ask those questions to allow space for somebody that is more introverted to speak up and share their ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, Heather, obviously in your position, you wear a lot of hats, and you're sort of, probably charged with identifying talent in a lot of different lanes and thinking about that. What's helpful to you, or just for people to let you know kind of where they want to go, or what their strengths are, how are you identifying that?
So going back to when I started at Chesapeake, I was really overwhelmed. I didn't understand the words that were in the files. We did a huge acquisition. My job was, this is before the digital age, and files came in physical format, and we had to immediately take them from X company to the Chesapeake way. Which was pretty easy because you kind of figure out some things, but the tabs in this file, I didn't know what most of the words meant. Division order was one of them. I knew what geology was. I'd taken geology classes, but I didn't understand what it was going into this file or how it applied to my job. Title opinion, I didn't know what a title opinion was. And so I was really overwhelmed. I like to be good at what I do, and I didn't feel that way as I'm plugging these papers into this file. And so I made a decision that I was either going to be overwhelmed and miserable, or I was going to figure it out. And so I went back to work on a Monday and decided the first I would go in order of the tabs. Accounting was the first one, and then division orders. And I made a friend in each one of these groups of people that I heard were good at what they do. Generally, people don't say no to free lunch and things like that, so it's really not that scary. So I haven't ever been in a formal mentor-mentee program, but I kind of created one for myself, and I'm really proud that I decided to do this one person at a time. But what that also did was show people in these groups that I cared about what they were doing, and they'd get really excited. Bob Brock was a division order analyst, may still be somewhere, and we'd go to Cousins every 2 weeks. And we'd eat hamburgers, he'd tell me about division orders. I started learning, and the more I learned, the more excited I got. But also, he was really excited to tell me about what he did. And so the more excited he was, it made me less scared to call the next person, call a geologist, and call an engineer. And I've continued to do that for almost 20 years now, and it's a huge plethora of people that you have that are resources to you that are so good at what they do. And I do that today. Our team, even the youngest people, I'm like, look, I called our young accountant in and I said, you don't have any baggage coming into this team. Tell me what you think after being here 2 months. What looks messy? What do you think we could do better? You just came out of OSU's accounting program. Like, you guys are learning exciting new things that we need to learn. And so I think taking that approach and teaching my team, like, none of us have all the answers. You have to reach out to people, whether the accountants reach out to public accounting firms and make friends and take people to lunch. But we also encourage within our team for our engineer, he'll take all the accountants to lunch and cross-train and cross-mesh with different divisions so we understand what each person is doing. And you also feel more integrated into the team and have more job satisfaction, I think, when you understand the whole picture and the company objective. But that all came back from learning what we were actually doing at this big, beautiful place.
Yeah, really sage advice. Sure.
I love that you're acknowledging that there's a lot of people at the table and they all have different ideas and they need to feel free to express them. There's always somebody smarter in the room than me. I acknowledge that right away.
Yep.
But loving to hear, like, from the accountant who just started, feel open to say
Right.
what you think, what we need to fix, what can we do differently, but also as a young professional, lean in. Mm-hmm. You have something to say. You have a voice. I mean, ask a question just to be heard. You might be in a meeting and you feel super intimidated to be there, but lean in and ask a question. Make yourself be seen, and then be a sponge and learn from that. I like when we have meetings and they're asking for, like a risk analysis or where to go forward on a certain situation. I always want to hear from everybody else in the room, because maybe I'm ultimately making that decision, but 9 times out of 10, I'm agreeing with that whatever decision the team has already put out there. So I always want to hear that, what you think, what you've learned, what do we need to work on, what can we do differently. So I love that you say that you encourage that at your level, because you are the CEO, right? That's such an amazing accomplishment. I could sit here and tout that all the time. But I think we're always our own worst critics, especially women, right? Women are hard on ourselves. We're hard on each other. I love that saying, because there's always someone who wants what you have or feel more entitled than you do. And I love the saying where, be the woman in the room that fixes the other woman's crown without acknowledging that it was ever crooked, right? We need to empower each other. We need to be there to help advocate for each other, male or female. I get the crown analogy as more female, but we need to be at a point where someday we aren't looked at as women leaders, we're just looked at as leaders. Mm-hmm. And that's just all encompassing. I think we've come so very, very far from where I started, but I love seeing the inclusion and the diversity today at the table.
Great. Right for me? Mm-hmm. I'm a really big advocate, and you've talked about mentoring and whatnot and having mentors, and I'm a really big advocate in the mentoring programs, not only sponsored university programs, but also company programs. And I was involved, as you two were, in the William Majors mentoring program. I chaired it for 7 years and was involved 14 years. I know you were in it 10 years, and you were in it many years. Julie, you were also a mentee. So when you were in college, you kind of were involved in the mentoring program. You had a few little different nuances, but could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so again, kind of talking back to my experience when I was at OU, the director of that program was very encouraging to students in very willing to give his advice on what you should do. And one of the first things he said was, you need to get involved in any way you can. So I took advantage of that in any way I could. So whether that was driving up to Oklahoma City for the OCAPL Monday night meetings, I did that. I volunteered as a student as much as I could. I gained a lot of informal mentors that way, I would say. And then, yeah, just briefly involved with the actual formal mentoring program, which was mostly comprised of OU Energy Management alumni and students that they would pair together based on interest, and I can't remember, there was some form that we filled out to kind of pair us. But basically you would be paired with somebody, and that person is kind of just somebody that you can reach out to on a regular basis. They would have like formal events, just a couple a year, that everybody would get together, but outside of that it was just kind of up to the mentee and the mentor to build that relationship and kind of take it where it would go. So I had several mentors, I would say, that I still have today, that I still talk to. Some were internal at Chesapeake, but I would say more were not. And so those relationships are super important. I think that mentoring is huge. And I've had lots of mentees in the program, and some put forth effort and some don't. I think it's just interesting to me. And whenever I talk to a student and they ask for advice, I always say, take advantage of the mentoring program, or make one. If you don't have one, like create one for yourself, because it's what you put in it. And you have no idea where things are going to ultimately take you through those relationships. So,
and on the flip-flop, I know that Serena and Julie, you both were mentors in the program. Right. Also, Serena, can you tell some of your experiences being a mentor and helping out students?
I absolutely loved that. I stopped doing it in 2020, about the time COVID happened. But actually, I don't know if she's here, but one of my last mentees works here at Chesapeake today. But yes, I've had many over the years. It's such a fun experience. If you guys ever get a chance to do that, because they still have the program going on, I'm just not a part of it any longer, but because I'm old and people don't want to hang out with me when they're in college, but it sure kept me young. But lots of fun lunches, Thunder games, networking events, NAPE. I mean, I always had girls. I know sometimes there was gender mix on the mentees and mentors, but I always had girls, and I still keep in contact with them, whether it be Facebook or Instagram. They've gone on to be leaders themselves. It's a wonderful program. And, I think everyday life, we're mentors, role models, whether we realize it or not, outside of a formal program, whether it's your kids or a neighbor or your church or obviously your coworkers. Someone's probably always looking at what you're doing, how you're behaving. And I think it's important for us to, set as good of an example as we can, be available, be open, and be honest. There's times where you have to have that hard conversation that says, maybe this isn't the right thing for you. Yeah. No one ever likes that, but I would rather be honest about it than to continue to lead someone down a wrong path if they're asking for your advice. The other thing is knowing when to give that advice and when to just, listen. Like you said, sometimes you need to listen more than talk. But it's great. Like I said, I've had some wonderful mentors. A lot of them were right here at Chesapeake. That was 9 years of my life right here, and those bonds I still consider some of them my best friends today. So I know Ronnie Ward was a big advocate for me when they very first came to me and wanted me to be a land manager here at Chesapeake. I was like, they're all men. I'm going to be the only chick in the room, because Pat was gone by that time, and I was like, it's okay. If you need to pick someone else, that's fine. He was like, what? No, we want you. So it's like, take that opportunity. I almost lost out on that opportunity because I just didn't believe in myself. I didn't think I was ready, or there's these other men that have so much more experience than me. But I leaned in, I learned a lot, and I had, like I said, I have some very, very strong mentors and support system that helped me through. And I think that's what we all have to find, as we've been talking about. Find your advocate, find your mentor.
How about you, Heather? Have you had any mentors or support that has helped you, get where you are today?
Oh my gosh, it's like an army of people that have helped me. Yes, there's several in this room, and like Serena said, at the time when I started, it was a main mafia of men. But that's encouraging, I think, to everybody that these guys were very proponents of women. I've continued to work places where, the best person for the job was selected. I'm sure I've been passed over for jobs for a guy before, but in my mind, it's like it wasn't the right spot for me because I keep ending up in the place where I need to be. So yes, and continue today. I mean, one of my biggest mentors is a guy on my board, is probably top 3 smartest guys I've ever met. And so you have to continue to have mentors. Now the weird dynamic or enlightening piece is finding out you're old or you've been doing this a while. I had a couple of ladies separately reach out to me to go to lunch and coffee, and I almost always say yes to that because people almost always said yes to me. And so I'm going to these coffees and, naturally become friends with these ladies and realize maybe a year or so later that they had a plan together to come after me, to become their friend and to get into my circle. And we're very close friends now. And I felt really convicted that they had to reach out to me and I wasn't doing that. But like Serena said, people are always looking at us in a positive or whatever light it may be. And I had no idea that there were women looking at me like I was, a mentor or leader because they're, 5 to 10 years younger than me. So I've tried to take a more proactive approach at being the one who reaches out to people now. Again, all of mine, both directions, has been very informal, but it was an enlightening experience to realize, and I realize I'm a CEO and all of that, but I'm still sometimes in my mind, I'm that 25-year-old girl at Chesapeake. So it's a weird change in dynamic because I do still need the support of mentors so much that I hadn't seen myself in the light of I could be a mentee to these young women that are huge stars in our industry.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. So, all of those things they're so important, but they all take time. And in addition to like the mentoring and being mentored continually, I think we always continue to learn, right? You're having these conversations to help grow yourself, grow your career. You also are sitting on boards and being involved in industry organizations, and you have a life, personal life that happens outside the walls of where you work. So I'm curious to hear from you about, I dislike the term work-life balance, and I think that's certainly not a new conversation. We talked about it for years. Particularly post-COVID, I think for me, work-life integration is a more meaningful term, and it's just personally what suits me best to try to find places that overlap and pursuing a career that I enjoy, leaving time for other things that help me grow in different ways, and paying attention to my family. I'm a mom too, like many of us are. So I'm curious about thoughts on how you have found a certain kind of integration or a play that works for you to pursue all those different things, and if there's been encouragement or things maybe your company does or that you think you've seen somewhere that provides good examples for that. So I wonder maybe Julie, if you have thoughts on.
Yeah, so what I've realized about myself is that I kind of just say yes to a lot of things. So once you start, volunteering in X, Y, or Z organization or a board or whatever it is, and you're committed and you're involved and you do a good job, then somebody's going to ask you again to do something else. And I don't like to tell people no, and so I like to try to make it work in some way. But what I have learned is that there is a limit at some point, and you do need to start saying no, and you do need to look at your priorities, and they change over time. And as a mom, my kids have obviously gone through different phases, and I kind of look back, and I think when I was probably the most active and busy in a lot of different associations and leading some of those associations, I was pregnant like all 3 times. And I'm like, how did I do that? I don't know. Yeah. I think you have to be, or I have to be very organized. I have to be very, thoughtful in my time, and like I allocate about just every 5 minutes to one certain thing. And I've gotten to a point where I don't like to just, it's not my personality to just be and just to be still and just like not be really busy. So I think it's kind of my personality is part of it. And I would say, since COVID, so I think it was kind of a juggle. And I would say, I agree with you. I think the proper term is more of an integration than a balance. I don't think there is a balance. Mm-hmm. And somebody told me that like several years ago, like there's going to be times when I'm not a great mom and I'm a better employee, and then it's going to be flip-flopped, I feel like. And that may be a daily switch. But that's just the reality of it. I think that's just how it is. But I think post-COVID, we learned that we could work differently. I feel like there's more flexibility on that side. There's also more flexibility with family, with home, with school, and the schools seem to be more flexible to me. So I think that post-COVID, we've learned that. I know Chesapeake has supported us in a very great way with flex time that we have. We've got a lot of other really great benefits that allow us to, spend time with our families when we need to. I mean, I don't miss events. I used to. When I first started at Chesapeake, that was a very different situation. Kind of the motto was get into work before your boss, stay after your boss, and like take your work home. And I mean, it was like, respond to calls within 24 hours. I mean, there were some things that were like pretty well ingrained, and that's just what I knew. So I think that also might have contributed to this, like, I'm just used to going. And so I just do that. And I like to participate in things outside of here and outside, with the schools and with the community and things like that. So yeah, I think that's my experience.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Serena, you mentioned that just over time, when you go through through your career, and it's a more male-dominated sector, but I think we are seeing a shift there. We definitely are seeing a shift. And so do you feel like generally the mood has changed a little bit, and just encouraging people, not necessarily just women, but employees and people generally to be able to pursue other things in their life? And
Yeah, so definitely I've experienced a lot of that same stuff, especially when my children were young and I was trying to, like you said, be a boss at work and raise kids and be homeroom mom and PTA and, church leader, and try to do everything, be the super mom hat. And during a lot of that time, I was single. I was divorced, so it was kind of like a single mom on top of that. And so I did have to learn to say no. I said yes to everything because you either felt guilty if you weren't doing everything at work, or you felt guilty if you weren't doing all the mom things. So as I've gotten older, I have learned to say no. I'm no longer on all those committees. I'm no longer on boards. I'm not mentoring anymore. I'm spending more time for me. But my children are raised and I have grandchildren. So it is a kind of a me time and our time with my husband, which is a wonderful change. But I do see post-COVID, we all realized the importance of family, right? We were forced to be a family because we were all in a room together, and you were being an employee and a boss and a mom and a teacher and everything else that came with it. And that's when a lot of people realize I can't be home with my kids all the time, or my husband, or if you're single, I don't want to be home alone all the time. So coming back to work was a blessing, but then there's some that very much still enjoyed that time working from home. So I think, at least for Ascent, we had to kind of shift and think about some different balances, if you will, or integration with work and family. Aubrey was big about work hard, play hard. And so we had a lot of benefits that we had here at Chesapeake that we've continued really at Ascent. But we have integrated some optionality to work from home on Fridays, maybe an optional day there. We have a lot more parental leave. It's not just maternity leave. If you adopt or you have a child, the men also have paternity time. We do volunteer time off, floating holidays. I mean, there's just so much more employee assistance and helping with budgeting and all these kind of things that I kind of navigated alone back then. So I'm glad to see there's more of a partnership. I think today's families are more of a partnership. You're co-parenting. It's not just the woman staying home and taking care of the kids, or it's not just the man staying home. It's a partnership. And I love seeing those cultural norms change because that's obviously not what I grew up with. But it's time for some of that balance to come back with your partner.
Yeah.
Okay, so we happen to be chatting during Women's History Month, so I thought I'd ask each of you. I'll start with you, Julie, and just go down the line. If you have a favorite historical female model that you look up to and why, and it doesn't even have to be historical. It can be someone in present day. But is there anybody that you would recognize?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple, but what comes to mind first is my mother. So my mom finished college later in life, so when we were probably in middle school, and she went from stay-at-home mom to full-time working, and she still works. She works for the Oklahoma Energy Resources Board and has for years. But she has always demonstrated and been a role model for not only myself but my brother, but specifically for me in that kind of make your own way. So really worked hard, lots of work ethic that she showed, and she did just whatever she possibly could to make sure that we had what we needed and what we wanted, and that we could succeed in our careers. And so I would say that's first and foremost who I would say. And then I would say after that, it's the female leaders that I initially started working with when I started my career. So Pat Good, Serena, on the work side, and then on the OCAPL side, Candy Robinson was the first. I don't know for anybody that knows Candy, but she just took me under her wing and said, I'm going to plug you in everything that I can, because you're here, you're willing, you're committed. Like, so on the OCAPL side and the AAPL side, I mean, she took me to board meetings and got me plugged right in. And so those individuals have been the role model that's shown me how to, proceed with a career in this business.
Great.
Yeah.
Heather?
I come from a family where all the women worked, and so I was raised knowing like I want to be a career woman too someday. And I remember as a little girl going to my grandmother's office. She owned a business, and she had a little typewriter, and she mailed out a lot of letters, and I would have to seal the envelopes, and then after I got my real work done for her, then I could go play on the typewriter. And some of my greatest memories being at her office, getting to do those things. And then as I got older, my mom was in real estate, and she would give me and my brother jobs. So to earn extra, like if we needed these fancy jeans or excess stuff for school clothes, we would have to go put flags. My dad's military, my mom's real estate, so she put flags every year at 4th of July in 8 million yards, and it was always 8,000 degrees uphill. And so my brother and I would do that. And as I got older, she started relying on me to make marketing materials for her. And so I would make marketing materials and send it out, and then I would get she'd pay me I think it was fair salary to do all these things. And so I saw these women integrating their families into their careers. And I'm ashamed to say I didn't do that until after COVID. I have 4 children. I didn't talk about them a lot in meetings because they're not going to believe I can do my job if they hear the situation I've got going on at home. And then, like these ladies, and we all are staring at each other at the table. I learned things, my kids weren't, that I wasn't involved in with their school. I didn't know how hard their homework was, and so they come by the office and stuff now. But my grandma and my mom really set the tone that it's not work-life balance. It is, you integrate your kids into your family or your work life, and they see how hard you work, and they figure out what their aspirations are. But I think it's so good for kids to see. So those two were, and RBG is my celebrity woman who I very much look up to.
Wow. So historically, women, I think I would probably say I admire the class that like an Audrey Hepburn or a Jackie O possessed in all the diversity and things. They always were very classy. I mean, some of the younger audience may not know who those people are. But I love the class about that. I love just someone like Queen Elizabeth. I mean, talk about being a matriarch in a patriarchal world for a very, very long time. Whether you agree with the royal or in the politics, I just think she always held herself with poise and dignity and respect through all that. But I think I used to hang this in my office, and I don't have it anymore, but there was a saying from Eleanor Roosevelt that no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. And that is just so true. I had to remind myself that all the time because I want to be liked. I do care if you judge, right? Most women do. We want to be liked. We're feelers with our heart. And I was giving that power away. If someone said something negative or cruel or something that hurt me, I let it break me. And as I got older, I kind of learned, I'm not giving that power away. I'm not giving that permission. So I hung that in my office for the longest time to kind of help remind me to be strong. We're built on the shoulders of the women that came before us. And as far as a personal mentor, I have one right here in this room, and it's Ella McDonald. Talk about a pioneer lady broker. She's out there elbowing those boys off the table and pulling books and checking records, and has her own brokerage company for years. And dear friend, great mentor, especially in this business. She wrangled some things that I never even had to think about, and I thank you for that. And then, of course, some, like for you guys, my mom, my grandma was the example of a Christian, godly woman for me. And then my mom, same thing. She stayed-home mom. We have a special needs brother, and she was caring for 4 children. And then later in life went back to work, and I became kind of the mom. So I think it helped me learn responsibility and nurturing and empathy at a very young age, but I'm also super A personality alpha, and I think I get that from my mom too. So there you are.
All right, great answers, great discussion. You know, I've known you guys for a long time, but I feel like I know you so much better now, and I really appreciate what I really do. I feel really blessed to know all you guys, and I know that people in the audience have really gleaned a lot from your discussion today, and I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story and insights with us. And we have a couple minutes, so I do want to see if we have any questions here. And my fabulous colleague Sarah has also joined us today to help with online questions.
So while they're thinking of questions, you guys would be super fascinated to hear Jackie's journey. I heard a little bit of it yesterday at lunch, and I was just like, that is so awesome. You need to speak a little bit about Fox News and Dubai, and, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Put you on the spot there.
I'll share one small anecdote, because I think it goes to sort of the tone we've been talking about, just sort of a general shift, right? I mean, a lot of these are really, they're just, women sometimes have different challenges, and so there's an evolution there over time. But I think regardless of gender, we all just want to be appreciated, and we all want to grow and be able to bring our best selves to the table, and so, but we only have our own lens. So I did spend a good amount of time in the Middle East. I lived there for almost 5 years, which was longer than I thought I was going to be there. But it reminded me of a time when I was in Saudi Arabia. Everything's quite contained, because for women you really don't go out and about. In some places you really can't. So you sort of have, like, the hotel is connected to the office, is connected to this mall. So I had a really short internal journey every day when I would go there for work, and I kind of had this routine. And I would come down from the hotel, and there was a Starbucks right there, and I'd go get my coffee, and then I'd go up to the office. And I knew the rules. I mean, that it's a very, men and women just do things separately there. And so that was not an unknown concept to me. But I had probably been there maybe on 3 different occasions before I finally decided, I'm going to go venture into the mall one evening. I had a couple minutes, so I did. And I went into the mall, and I discovered that right as I walked in, on the other side was the women's Starbucks. And I had, for 2 years on every visit, been going into the men's section. And this poor gentleman probably could have been fired, but he just never said anything to me. Clearly, he could tell that I had no idea what I was doing. But I think of that because it's like, even though I sort of was aware, as I think we all are, one thing that we can encourage everyone to do to help progress women and everybody is just being mindful of that, right? We kind of, even when you sort of feel like you know what the situation is or the game is, there are always these unknown elements or things that you just assume and take for granted. So I would encourage us not to do that. But I had a lot of interesting experiences like that. They were quite different from the day-to-day that most of us experience here. So, but I do think I saw a hand here.
Thank you all for the conversation today. I'm just wondering if you can speak a little more deeply about saying no in the workplace. I know for me, it feels like a sign of weakness, but hearing you all talk, it's really a sign of strength. And just wondering if it was experience and time that took you to get there, and if you think maybe the culture of our industry has changed to where they're recognizing that saying no is a strength.
I think for me, it is hard. And as women, we feel bad if we're not giving everybody everything they need. I don't know, maybe you guys will have a different take. For me, it has never gotten easier, but I still have a firm line of what is a yes and what is a no, what is most important to me, what is something that I need to write a check to because I care, and what is something I want to go devote my time to. But I do always give a big formal presidential apology speech in every email when I decline something. And later I'm like, was that necessary? But I want them to feel that I care, but I can't be there plus whatever other obligations I have that week, month, day. So I don't know if you guys have a different take, but I do have a firm line that I do say no to things that can't fit into my world for my mental health or my family schedule or my work schedule. And so the ones that are important, I find a way to make them work. And the ones that don't, I do give a big formal apology.
I got one of those from yesterday.
Yes, I know. I can't help it. I couldn't make lunch. It's not even that scary of a thing to say no to. But I needed him to know I was finishing an audit. And so that had to be my focus yesterday. But I don't think he would have cared if I would have said, sorry, Chuck, can't make it. I don't think you needed a formal dissertation.
That's a great example, right? There's a tendency for women to feel like they have to qualify when they say no, which I don't see from male colleagues. So
right. No, they're like, no thanks.
You need
Catch you next time.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit because I really did appreciate that, and I do the same thing. I think it's just courtesy, and sometimes.
And it took 2 minutes to write my dissertation. And you guys all know that I wanted to be with you, but I was doing something much more unpleasant. So I do think you're right. I think people care sometimes to know, what you shouldn't have to have that reason, but I do think in the human connection, it's nice to know, like, I would love to be there to have lunch with you while you're in town, but this is what is going on today.
Yeah, I think you have to have that hard line. And I think that's hard to get to that point where you feel like you can do that. And I think it just took time and confidence and just kind of really paying attention to and building relationships with those around me that I work with. But I have just one quick example of just, when we moved to having more flex time and post-COVID, I mean, there's so much flexibility during COVID, and then it was kind of like, well, what's after COVID and what do we do? And we offer flex time, and people absolutely take advantage of it. But at the leader level, it's kind of like, do I do that or do I not do that? It's like, I need to do that because I need to set that example so that other people feel like they can do that. But then I think even probably more so as a female, you're like, oh, but my male counterparts are in the office every day. Is that gonna, and I mean, I just immediately, and whether it was good or bad, I don't know, I guess we'll find out. But I just said, I am gonna do that. I've been working for, 18 years and I've missed certain things that I wanted to be a part of with my children. And so I just kind of took that like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna do it like, I'm gonna pick up my kids every day from school and I'm gonna work in the evenings or whatever that looks like, but I'm going to do it. And it was a little bit kind of scary stepping into that space, but I'm so glad that I did. And, I told our CEO the other day when we were coming back from Dallas that I was like, yeah. He's like, how's work from home? I was like, it's great. I leave every day at 3 and I go get my kids. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, it was good.
You're still here.
So, yep, I'm still here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the comfort of saying no looks different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes your at-home life, it's easier to say no after you get to a certain point. I've had to learn that, right? But at work, it's a little bit more touchy because you are fearful of that. Is that no going to appear weak, or I'm unavailable, or I'm not a good staff member? And I think as I've grown with the career, I want to also allow those employees to say no. I don't want to ask anything of somebody that I wouldn't do myself. But there did come a time where I had to say, no more emails answered after 10:30 at night, right? Some of you may be saying at 8 o'clock at night, or I'm not going to answer something at 6 a.m. I had to give myself permission to say no and have my family time. But I also had to learn to say no on family time, in that by the time I told a story to another group recently, because we are strong women and sometimes we're hard to live with. Sometimes it's hard to leave the boss at the office and not bring it in the front door. trust me, I've had some failed relationships from that. But I had to kind of learn that as I'm driving home, I needed to leave the office and say no to no more of that thinking. And by the time I hit a certain stop sign on my way home, I got to let that all go. And now it's family time, and I need to spend time with my kids or my grandkids or now my husband. But that's a learned thing too, because we're super women, right? We can do this and this and this, and you take this hat off and put this hat on. It's just something that you learn. There's no easy answer. You got to find your own comfort level. But as a manager, I don't want to expect something from my employees that I'm not going to challenge myself with, if that helps.
Okay, maybe one more from our online audience.
Yeah, we've had some questions come through about salary and upward mobility and how you start those conversations, or how you've started those conversations of your salary expectations and your potential upward mobility through your career.
That's a tough one.
It is tough. Again, women are the worst.
We're always,
It's
yeah.
tough.
We are notoriously paid less. I mean, I think we all know that. Those are tough conversations. Asking for a promotion, asking for a raise is difficult. I know most of the companies I've worked for have had a formal compensation review process, and so it gives you the opportunity to have that conversation because your boss is giving you a review of your performance, and then there's an opportunity to discuss weaknesses, strengths, and what your salary is. I kind of like, I don't know if any of you have read the book from Sheryl Sandberg, who was the CEO of Facebook. She wrote Lean In, and she was talking about when she was asking Mark Zuckerberg for her salary and stuff, and he made an offer, and she thought that she was worth more than that, but she was scared to say anything, and she went home and she talked to her husband about it, and she came back and she asked for more, and he gave her more than that, and he goes, "You women, you're your own worst critics. You need to be a better advocate for yourself. Women need to believe in other women, but first they have to believe in themselves." So it's kind of funny, we're kind of scared to ask for it, but you have to also be able to accept no. It's not ready or in the future, and those are hard conversations too. Trust me, I've had many times where it's like, no, not now. Yeah. So, but it's hard conversations to have for sure. I don't have a magic pill to say, hey, this is what you need to say or don't say to get that next raise or that next promotion. I don't know if you guys do.
I think timing is important,
Yeah.
like you said. Sure. I think blindsiding your boss and showing up and making demands is always scary, or threatening to leave to go to a new job, those types of things. When my husband and I go back and forth, and I'm like, "You're so aggressive. I can't believe that's what you said." But this worked for him. And so I think timing is everything. I've appreciated people on my team, whether it's during the review process or a time when they're like, what is my potential here? And I had one young woman who has much more gumption than most men even, and she made time to talk to me, and it got me thinking. And so there really wasn't a lot of upward mobility in her position, and so she was kind of capped at the salary. But she's one of those people that is a go-getter, and if there's trouble in accounting, she goes and solves the problem. If there's trouble in this area, she goes and solves that problem, but she also will order coffee and make sure there's paper towels out. And if there's a leak in the ceiling, she knows who the property manager is, like a really important person to have on the team. And so I was at home that night, and I called her back into my office the next day, and we have this huge hole in accounting, and I said, "I think you'd be a perfect fit for this position, and I have room to raise your salary, but that's a huge jump, from land to accounting, but that's something for you to think about." And I put it back on her to kind of, think through, but she started the conversation and came with, questions of what her upward mobility was that got me thinking. So I think timing, like a lot of places now have review periods, and using that as an opportunity to talk to your boss. And doing your research. If you see that you make $45,000, but the average salary is $65,000 for your position, then you should bring that information to your boss. We've done a lot of that over the past few years. Private equity is a tough industry to group to have increased salaries, and so I've had to do a lot of research, like, hey, engineers make this amount, these types of accountants with this many years make this amount. We've got to boost people up to be competitive for hiring, but you have to have research and support to back those things up, whether you're the boss or the employee in those conversations.
I don't have anything to add.
I think, I mean, you're exactly
It
right.
is a
You
great
have to
question.
assume that your boss has that information, right? So it is a great question because I mean, not to date myself too much, but some of us came up.
You
It was
can't
pretty,
be dated
it was
more than
pretty
me.
black box. I mean, that
Yes.
information wasn't available. You couldn't go online and sort of see average salaries, or now there's all these great surveys and public information about that. So you should definitely assume that your higher ups have that, and you should go into the room with that information, which I think nowadays is to Heather's point, just a real advantage that early on in my career we certainly did not have. So I'm sure we have lots more questions, and we could sit here and chat with you guys probably for hours, but we're a little bit over time, so I think we'll probably call it a day here. But I want to thank you again so much, each of you, for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much.
So
We
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you again to Chesapeake in particular.
Thank you to you guys for asking us. And thank you to Chesapeake for allowing us to be here.
And for those of you that need Landman credit, good news, we're able to offer some credit for this program today too, so you'll get a follow-up note from us that will have the paperwork there that you need to fill out, and you can select your credit. And join us next time. I think actually, Chuck, you're the next presenter for Olivia Gibbs, right?
I believe I am
tribal.
with my colleague Greg
That's right,
Sergio here.
with our buddy Greg.
Also, if you get on our website, if you had to leave early or if you couldn't view the whole conversation, it is online, right?
Correct.
They can pull it up
in the next day or two, we'll put this
you guys
feed
can-
up there, share it with your
Yeah.
friends so they can gain all this awesome insight, and then all the programs we do are posted there. So
Great.
thanks
Great.
again, and thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Till there is